It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to episode 53 of Boroughs and Burbs. I'm going to hit share screen. Today, we're doing the Vero Beach show, and I want to introduce my two guests, Sally McNally, and known for marketing savvy, boundless energy, and an ability to merge creativity with analytics, and Bob McNally, who is one of the best builders in Vero Beach. His company is known as Palm Coast Development. Bob comes originally from the New Jersey area, and Sally comes from Fairfield County with Scott and I. I want to also introduce my wingman, my co-host, Scott Hobbs. He's a builder of high-end custom homes in New York City, the Hamptons, Connecticut, the Rhode Island coast. What am I missing, Scott?
A little bit of New Jersey too.
A little bit of New Jersey. Can't forget New Jersey, right, Bob?
You cannot forget New Jersey, even after not being there for 28 years.
So, Bob, let's start with Bob. Bob, you were originally a builder up here in New Jersey, building big projects, big office buildings, big complexes, and then you decided to take all that knowledge and head on down to Vero Beach.
That is correct.
Why Vero Beach?
It's a very small town. We had young children, had a very good private school, and there's a lot to like about Vero. Reminded me of our town that we brought the kids up in New Jersey. So it's a northern town, but in a southern setting.
That sounds like all about the family. What about the opportunity? I mean, was it a great big sandbar that needed what you do?
No, I was actually recruited down here to take over a very high-end building company that specialized in 30,000 square foot houses and 20,000 square foot houses. They knew my background and they got themselves in a little bit of trouble. So I was the turnaround fella, and then I bought the company.
20,000, 30,000 square foot houses. That sounds pretty big, even by Fairfield County standards. Yeah. So is that what everybody has down there?
No, that was a preeminent community in Martin County called Sailfish Point. And these were ocean properties, by and large, all waterfront community. And had a lot of pop in the beginning of the century in 2000 to 2010. Now they're tearing the houses down. But we built that house on 2 acres. It's a big boy. So in those days, in the year 2000, it was $1,100 a square foot to build that house.
Wow. Yeah. Now in Florida, of course, square footage is different than up north. I mean, so you have interior and then also under roof and exterior stuff. How do you guys, when you talk about square footage, how do you talk both from a builder and a realtor perspective?
Well, from a builder's perspective, I always go with AC square feet.
As do we.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
No. And I think that's the right way to do it. And all the houses have lanais and garages and so forth. So it's factored in. But most people buy AC square feet. If they're going to have a 5-car garage or a 6-car garage, there'll be an add-on to the overall price if you're sitting down in conversation. But the way we do it is AC square feet.
And what's like a typical Lanai space? I mean, so how much undercover outdoor space does a 10,000 square foot house have?
We would probably have 2 lanais on that house that would be 14 feet deep, 32 feet long. Maybe that would be the main lanai behind the main room, which we call a great room down here. And then we'd probably have a side pavilion. We build a lot of houses that have cabanas in the backyard or casitas.
Mm-hmm. It's so important, Scott, because everybody wants to be able to live outdoors. It's really, really critical. Some of our older homes that don't have that, where the roof line just ends at the end of the house and they've got the pool. Well, we know eventually you don't always want to be in the sun. So those houses, it's a more difficult sell because you have to rely upon umbrellas. So outside space is a very, very, like this house I just closed on yesterday. Yay, woohoo. Beautiful, beautiful house, reflective of more of our current architecture versus the heavy Mediterranean. And you see the roof is pulled forward and you've got beautiful details, and the outside space in many cases is nearly as important as the inside space.
Right.
And it really adds perceived value, which translates to real value.
Correct.
So how big is this house? And about how much would a house like this size and shape cost?
Well, this is a very interesting tale about this house. Like most markets, our market has accelerated during the whole COVID crisis. And this house was a custom build. It was not meant to be a flip. It is set, I have to give you a bit of a context, which really helps adds to its value. Our best lots tend to have the oldest houses, right? Because they're the best lots. So it's set amongst a very desirable all waterfront community known as the Moorings. But most of the houses, the transition to newer house is maybe only 50 to 60% done. And on this particular thumb, there's only a handful. That's not it, if you want to go back up. That's an example of an older house. So this house was built, I'm going to say 2020, and it was sold a year ago for 4.7. A young family came from California, and it was a market maker for that neighborhood, although the whole neighborhood was transitioning as so. So that sold 4.7. It's around 3,500 square feet, but it's got a lot of really unusual features, unobstructed water views, and it just sold for 5.5 yesterday.
And mostly because of its location.
Well, you know, it's so interesting with the difficulty you builders are having getting materials, so too are reno people, right? So what's happening is the amenity now that's almost trumping everything as a starting point, like table stakes, the amenity needs to be conditioned for the market to be really excited about it. And then on top of it, do I have a secondary, like that beautiful water view, navigable water? Is it in a premier location? But condition is now almost the table stakes for the market to really get interested in the property. Because you've got a whole cohort of buyers that would have pre-COVID supply shortages said, oh, I'll take that and I'll make it our own. But if they're unsure about how long that's going to take, what it's going to cost, and can I make it happen, you've got this whole sector of folks that are out and really only want newer products. So that's part of the reason why we have such excruciating pressure on specific kinds of properties, and there's just very little supply.
Let me back up, because I probably need to do a better introduction. First of all, when we talk about Vero Beach, we're talking about this island right in front of us with three causeways connecting to the mainland.
Yep. And I chose this photo, John, because I thought your viewers would really see this photo is the tail of the tape, if you will, of low density zoning that's been our policy since 1977. So you see the difference that it's made to the development of the community. You're not seeing high rises galore. And it really affects how we live and operate to the degree, for example, we have some clubs that have beach clubs. By and large, we don't have that model here because it's really easy to get to the beach. Right. Even our public beaches, we've got low density, height restrictions. We're not a very busy, we're one of only 2 counties in the state that have such restrictive density. And you can see how it literally has played out on the barrier island.
So when I look at these two of the causeways are in the photo, and this space between them is the commercial center of the island, the walkable. That's right. Downtown.
And it is limited as well by design. We've got limited multifamily zoning, limited commercial. And, you know, when visitors come from the New Canaan or Fairfield County area, they'll often say, Sally, what does the little downtown Ocean Drive look like? And I often say, truthfully, it reminds me of New Canaan with palm trees because it's charming, it's limited, it's full of independence. That's a hotel that Gloria and Emilio Estefan own right on Ocean Drive. That little photo, and maybe I gave you too small a size. That's our Ocean Drive where we have the Saturdays Farmers Market. And there's no multinational, it's not like an outdoor mall. It's quite charming. And this is to illustrate that our river is not a freshwater river. And coming down from Connecticut, I just didn't know what the heck that meant. I just thought the intercoastal was the intercoastal. I was familiar with Boca and that was about it. And we are a brackish body of water known as the Indian River Lagoon. So you see we have white pelicans and we have bottlenose dolphin. But in general, I would never say never, alligators don't like it. So if that was fresh water, that woman would be being very brave being in there if it was full of alligators, and it's just not. And parts of it are super wide, and there's spoil islands, and it's super, super cool.
What's all this talk of alligators? You're going to scare away the tourists. Come on.
You know, I've only ever seen one. In 20 years, I've only ever seen one, and it was way, way, way out west of town, out by I-95.
We don't have any in the river.
No, we don't. I literally have never seen one, but we've seen manatees and dolphins and bald eagles and river otters.
We have incredible wildlife.
It's so cool.
Well, you definitely see that there's a whole bunch of parks and preserves and other things on the island and bordering that, which I assume really helps again on the wildlife side of things.
It certainly does. It certainly does, Scott. And all of the spoil islands are designated preserves and may not be developed. And we've got a very strong and well-capitalized land trust that has done a very good job trying to acquire most of the non-developed lands on the river to keep things fairly much the way they are.
So where is the land trust on this photo? Up north?
They have an office, but they're buying land all over Vero. They're trying to really acquire land along the river that has not yet been developed.
So all that big dark green space north and west of the causeway, those
are tall live oak trees.
Oh yeah, that's live oak. Yeah, that's live oak canopy. Yeah. What's interesting about Vero is that we're the first municipality within the line of the tropics. So as a result, we're just north enough that we get the live oaks that everybody loves, and they're so beautiful, but yet we're in the tropics, so we get palm trees. And some of our most revered neighborhoods have these glorious live oak canopies that remind you of, say, sea oaks up at Sea Island or something. They're just spectacular.
And the other thing that Vero offers is we have a tremendous art center and theater and children's theater along Riverside Park, which is 13 acres.
Yeah.
With an oak stand, and they have all kinds of Saturday activities under the oak stand, from art shows to food shows, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty vibrant.
It's a very artsy place, and it's because the folks here support it whether or not they're here full time. And it really makes a difference. I'll say personally, coming from the New York City area where you guys are now, I thought that was going to be my one concession coming to Vero, frankly, because, you know, we can get to Palm Beach, but it's, you know, it's not overnight. I mean, it's not such an easy thing. And I was pleasantly surprised. Our actors are an Actors Equity Theater, and we've got very fine literary arts and several symphonies. So the art scene was my personal surprise. So I always make sure I point it out for people that are coming to town, because they think there's going to be nothing, and there's quite a lot to do.
Number one, it's very uncongested.
Yeah.
So why would somebody go to Palm Beach 90 miles south from Vero Beach? You're saying that they go there for the restaurants, the action,
Yes. I mean, if you had a yen for Trader Joe's, we don't have one. We don't have enough density. I know a lot of girlfriends that put their insulated bags in the back, and they head down to Trader Joe's, and then they go once a month. Palm Beach is fun, but it's crowded. What I found that we really loved about Vero Beach, we're a skinny peninsula in Florida, right, John? So hour down to Palm Beach, 2 hours you're over in Tampa, 5 hours you're up in Savannah, 4 hours you're down in the Keys, and yet I always go, "Ooh, I'm glad to be home." But it was fun to go.
It's a nice, quiet town.
Yeah, it really lives like a small town. And people that say, "I don't think Florida's really my bag, it's too crowded or it's charmless," they usually come in Vero Beach. They say, "I didn't think towns like this existed anymore."
Agreed.
One of my favorite authors is Carl Hyacin, who has a rather humoristic and dark view of development inside of Florida. And so it seems like Vero Beach actually has almost the anti-development and his view of Florida. How did it come into being that they were managed to maintain restrictions and come up with a...
Well, a lot of policy is reactive, not proactive, right, Scott? What happened is our favorite two ugly high-rises went up in 1977. It wasn't proactive, but at least it was reactive. And the folks that were in power then said, oh no, we cannot have this. So in 1977, they reacted in a very progressive way. And that's when the whole thing was instituted. And it has been in place ever since. And Vero has always been a little bit of a visionary. We adopted Miami-Dade build codes before anybody else in the state did. It's always been saying we want to keep it what it is instead of build, baby, build.
But our building standards are very high.
Our building standards are very high. And as an aside, Carl Hyacin now calls Vero Beach home.
Oh.
One of many writers who lives here.
You guys probably mellowed him out to get into the children's books. So that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm a little bit looking at the map. So the Vero Beach does go to the other side of the intercoastal, or is Vero Beach really referenced only to the island part?
Oh gosh, no, there's a very vibrant mainland. And as prices start to accelerate and customers start to say, well, do I want to or need to pay the premium that the land value does to being on the barrier island? Is there an alternative? And there's some very vibrant quadrants just off, I will call it. One of the forerunners was a guy named Carl Icahn, who developed a golf course community known as Grand Harbor. And back in the day, he was just off. So you exit and you just exit the beach and it's there. And when he did it, everybody said, you're crazy. No one's going to go there that has any discernment. And he did very well. And others popped up in the go-go days of the 2000s to 2008 markets. And now it's a viable plan B for people that either want newer product for the same money or saying, I don't know if I really care about the premium that the island location provides.
The depth of the mainland, Scott, really runs from US 1 to Route 95.
Okay.
That's the corridor.
Yeah, but what's fabulous about it, Scott, there's master planning where after 66th Avenue, it really goes largely agricultural. So again, there are bumpers in place to try to make sure we don't crawl all the way out to I-95. So the main thrust of the development on and off the island was the middle corridor, as you would expect. And then as it grew, it progressed out. And then once everything hit 66th Avenue, it had no choice but to go north and south because that's where the land with the zoning was located. And so there's been a real attempt to be mindful about very careful growth and not just to be overrun. And we've got to be one of the very few towns that are not built out past I-95.
100%.
And it's because of thoughtful long-term planning.
Well, it's also because we're a small county, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So we're being discovered decade after decade.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the Vero Beach Regional Airport. I think that's the most exciting thing on the page because if I can't get there from here, then I'm not considering it. I mean, a lot of people pick their Florida beach based on how easy it is to get there. Can I get there with a direct flight? And I understand that we had 20 when I looked it up on Wikipedia or wherever it was, they said 26 direct flights a day from around the country into Vero Beach. But then I learned that you were renovating your airport and they canceled a lot of those flights right up until March of this year. So
that's correct.
What happens?
We've got a small commercial enterprise known as Elite Airways based out of Portland. They fly to Newark, they fly to Portland, they fly to the Caribbean. At one point they were at Westchester, but sadly they are no longer there. They're actively trying to get a gate at Providence to make it easier. There's talk maybe Hartford. That's the only commercial craft. We are, however, equidistant to a bunch of different airports. When we came from Connecticut, we thought we were going to be at the beck and call of Palm Beach only. And in fact, that's not true. There's really a triangle. You've got Palm Beach about an hour and 15 to the south of us. You've got Melbourne about 45 minutes to an hour to the north of us. And then you've got Orlando.
For all my friends in Fairfield County, an hour and a half to Newark, get down there and another hour and a half from the Palm Beach airport, it's just not going to work.
They clearly have never been to Vero.
Any chance we could get that Elite, that Westchester, that White Plains direct into Vero flight? I mean, if Scott and I and all our letter writing friends get on
I think we should start a campaign. Let's start a groundswell. There certainly is the demand for it here already. There's no doubt about it. 100% I agree with you, because it was always well received and they were never really clear about why it fell out.
But I don't think you really need that, because I think prices have gone, what, 30% higher in the last year? So you don't really need Scott and I and all our friends coming down there, do you?
No.
Well, you can, well,
Thanks,
you know,
Bob.
John, you're always welcome to come down, but the number of houses available, the beauty of our policy mandate is like this hedge against sprawl, because it's literally limited. So, you know,
we're in a scarcity market right now where I'd say 60% of everything we're doing is knocking houses down, reclaiming the property and rebuilding. And it's an exclusive club that can afford such a thing. But that's basically what's happening on the Barrier Island in the better neighborhoods. Not all the neighborhoods, but in the better neighborhoods.
But that's because you build at the high end of the market. And as you began the show by saying, the best land was developed back in the 50s. And so I have to knock something down if I want one of the premium parcels on the intercoastal or on the beach.
That is correct.
That's right. But it's all relative, right? My favorite word for real estate is context, right? The house that we showed that just traded yesterday, that was a 2-year-old house, sold for $1,200 a foot. That is, you know, and that's not a small number. I'm not going to pretend that it is. If that were down in South Florida, it would be $2,400 a foot.
Is that the one?
That's the one. That's right.
$1,200 a foot. How much for the land? How much for the land right there?
Land value there is about 1.7.
Okay. And how much was the house?
The house was 5.5 is what it traded for.
How many square feet?
Around 37. It sold around $1,200 a foot, John.
3,700 is considered an average or a big house?
I'd say
average-ish.
No, I'd say below average.
Below average?
Most of what we're doing now is 4,500 feet.
Yeah. But my point is that 1,200 would be probably at least 50 to not 100% more in the context of, say, Boca or Delray or Palm Beach. So, I mean, yes, we've had, you know, 29% year over year, but still relative to if you're looking for a waterfront lifestyle or a Florida lifestyle, we are still undervalued compared to our sister communities to the south.
So break it down for me. $1.7 million, all right? I arrive with my duffel bag of cash and I say, oh, that's a little bit too much. I don't need a dock. I don't need a dock. Can I get something for less? Can you help me?
Yeah, 100%. In descending values would be oceanfront, river like this one with unobstructed views, private dock. And then you could go like I am. We're east of A1A. My husband and I is kind of across the street from here. We are on a dry lot. We did not have the ability to do waterfront of any kind, but what we chose was a community that had a private beach access, which we thought was super cool. So we're on, you know, we came from 10 acres in Connecticut down to 1/3 of an acre and thought, my stars, how are we going to do that? But the beach becomes your backdrop, you know, and then becomes your backyard. And so, you know, we're 5 off A1A, 5 off the ocean. And so we, you know, our value right now is probably 1.6 or 1.7.
Where are you on this map?
We are like around here somewhere. I mean, there's the tiki hut at my beach is in here. We're east of A1A, so we don't have to cross over A1A, and it's just a large oval. And
what does that mean, A1A? I see the U.S.
A1A is our main north-south road that traverses the Barrier Island.
Okay, I see it. And are you north or south of the
No, we're south. We wanted proximity to the same school that Bob wanted proximity to. So we wanted to be close to the St. Edward's School. So the moorings where we just were is here, the house that I just sold. My house is right around here somewhere.
I can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see me, sorry.
No, but are you on?
I'm right about there. Yep. But I'm east of A1A. And so east of A1A in and of itself is desirable because it means you don't have to traverse across the road to get to the beach.
But you're pretty far from town. Is there also value to being close to town, and the further away you are, the more remote you are, the better deal, the better value you can get? or no?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. The hottest quadrant in town right now is this whole notion of, if you went north in between our two causeways, this whole in-town area, where if you have a golf cart, you could actually golf cart everywhere. That whole notion of being in between the two bridges. And it's a very dreamy idea to think about hiking and biking and walking and getting your golf cart. That's where Bob lives. It's where a lot of our projects are. It's where some of our most coveted neighborhoods are.
That's the primary area that I build in.
I mean, that's the filet mignon right there in many respects.
That box right there. That box is the filet mignon.
And they're increasingly saying proximity to the downtown, to Riverside Park, to my club, is an amenity that really adds value, and I'm willing to pay more for it. So we often use in our marketing parlance between the bridges location, because people know what that means, and they say, oh, it's close to everything, and it's super desirable.
Now, like in a normal week, how often do you cross the bridges?
If you ask me that question, Scott, probably 4 times a week at most. And I would say the same with my wife. I think Sally's in a different business. All of my activities on the barrier island, so I don't have much cause to go over there. Fill up with the gas. We don't shop anymore. We use Ship for groceries.
It's so true, right?
On and on.
Yeah.
And so very rarely. But the better restaurants are on the island, in my opinion. And
Bob, it doesn't sound like you've spent much time at Trader Joe's.
No time. We do have a fresh market. But no time.
And a lot of people instead, what I will say, John, is they'll hop on their bike or their golf cart, and we've got a really charming Saturday's farmers market. So a lot of people do that instead of going to whatever Trader Joe's, and they buy their, organic vegetables and fish and cheese, and everybody has coffee and brings the dog, and it's like old home.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Let me ask you a question under potential deals or inefficiencies, and whether or not it's possible or not. But if houses need renovation, it sounds like, again, they're trading at a discount. There's always an issue, especially as you go back 20 years, 25 years, whether or not like the floor plan or the elevations or even the codes, can you even get them up to something that would work for modern day? And so is it feasible to do a gut renovation, or is it really, it's just you're probably equal trying to knock the thing down and start over?
You have a couple of constraints, Scott. You have your FEMA standards. So if you have your older houses on the water, they've elevated the elevations, as you probably know. And then you get into this 50% rule nonsense. And it's very, very punitive. There's a few ways around it, but it's punitive. But I would tell you that I think Florida product ages very poorly. Anything that's over 20 years old, I think, is very difficult. The ceilings are now higher. There's more glass today. Forget the code and all the energy stuff. Just basic floor plans, X's and O's. Prior, the product's tired, and it costs a lot to renovate. I'm renovating a major house. Somebody bought it for $3 million. I took the trusses off, most of the walls down, removed the cabana. By this time, and I'm using helical piles underneath the slab. So I've got 270 helical piles going underneath this thing. It would have been better in some respects to just have eliminated the house. The client didn't want to do that, and so on and so forth.
Does grandfathering allow you to do a bigger house or a bit closer to the water or something if you do the renovation, or not really?
No, setbacks are the same, and they operate mostly on FAR ratios here. So if your lot's 10,000 square feet, as an example, that's a small lot, and the FAR is 0.371, you're going to be at 3,700 feet, and that includes your garage. So in the city of Vero Beach, that's fairly punitive. But the older houses in the neighborhoods that I was talking about, we have larger lots.
Right.
So I live on 0.8 of an acre, which is like, that's a big lot.
Yeah.
Having come from 5 acres in New Jersey, it's not so big.
And on the consumer side, Scott, what I always try to say to clients is, we literally need to understand the foundation. And if it's a 1980s or a 1990s house, it may be near unstable soils, water, and it might be a monolithic slab. It might not even have the helical piles that Bob needed to add. So I often say to clients, I know you're besotted with this, but if you want to do something, you probably just need to paint it and love her the way she is, because if we literally need to understand the foundation, the elevation, and they're probably, the answer to those questions are probably not going to support reinvestment of any magnitude.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah. But consumers don't think that, they fall in love with the house and go, oh, we can do the kitchen or whatever. Does the foundation support extra weight? I had an investor that wanted to add square footage, and it was on a monolithic slab, and it was it was a early 1990s house. There was no way that the structure would have supported more weight.
Bob, you have 8/10 of an acre in the filet mignon square.
Yes, he does.
And I live on an island off the island. You see that triangular shape in the middle of that? Nope. Move to your right. To your right there.
Right in there.
That's where I live.
That's where Bob lives. That's an all waterfront community. Generally speaking, our development model is one where we're a skinny island, right? So most of our developments are perpendicular, meaning the majority of your lots are like in my neighborhood, where I'm on a dry lot and a handful enjoy either the water or the river.
Right.
We have a handful like this neighborhood that all share a really super desirable amenity, which would be deep water.
I'm looking around Bob's neighborhood. These
That's the neighborhood.
That's the neighborhood. And many of these homes are older. And as we talked about before, the bigger lots tend to have the older houses.
I'm building 3 houses in that neighborhood right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Super desirable.
Pardon me?
Wow. 3 houses. This is a very exclusive neighborhood, and you're building 3 houses in it.
Yes.
So I can walk to work. How about that?
Wow. And it looks so peaceful.
It is very peaceful. And again, like a lot of our neighborhoods, John, it's going through a transition where, when you think about it, if your original development was 80s or 90s, and they were our age, and we think we're young, right? So fast forward 30 or 40 years, they're all aging out of their homes now. And so there's literally waves of new generations coming in.
Correct.
And either knocking down and raising, to Bob's point, or depending on the house, making it their own. And so really that is true in almost every neighborhood in our
But I have to say this about that to sound like Richard Nixon, okay? All my clients right now are in their 70s. All of them.
Yeah.
All 3 of the people building on the filet mignon island.
Mid-70s.
Now, lest we countermand the notion that we're only the blue hair set, okay?
Oh.
Hey, I'm the blue hair set. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the biggest changes we saw during COVID, 2 big things. One, a broader array of geographic feeders. California, Phoenix, Delray, Fort Lauderdale, places that would come to visit would never come wholesale. One week I had 5 inquiries from St. Louis people. 5. I was like, what is in St. Louis? So
they all know each other? They know each other?
No.
Wow.
And in 1 week. And then the other thing that happened with COVID, work from home became a thing, right? And so everybody gave cause to say, do I like my house? Does my house work? Do I want to be in Timbuktu? Is there another place I could be? So what's happening is half of my clients still have kiddos at home, and they're able to figure it out, whereas it was much more cumbersome before work from home became so widely accepted.
Here's an interesting stat. All 3 buyers in the neighborhood that I'm building for are from New Jersey.
The word is out. I understand that down at the bus terminal that there's a big sign, come to Vero Beach.
Well, they say, and who's pushing them on the bus, John, is their tax advisor saying, go, establish domicile residency.
Well, so let's talk about that. It used to be a place to retire, and you're saying that since COVID, that's changed. So contrast for me the 2018 market versus now. In my town, I would say we had 1/3 crosstown moves, 1/3 from out of the area, and 1/3 were sort of trade up. How has it changed? What's the mix? Where are the buyers coming from now versus where did they come from only a few years ago? And
well, we retain the base of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Canada, a little bit of Minnesota, a little bit of Michigan, you know, in general.
And 5 people
That
from St. Louis.
That has gone, and now, but we've got places we just didn't hear from previously. California, Phoenix, people are tired of sand. They want to see sand with water behind it, you know. South Florida saying it's too crowded, or I'm going to be able to sell for a bazillion, so I'll come up here. So Fort Lauderdale, Boca, Delray, those were not communities that ever came here other than for a pied-à-terre, and they're coming now. And so that's
fair to say 50% are still are working, not retirees, or is it higher?
In my book of business, 50% are still working.
All my buyers, despite the fact that they're in their 70s, are working.
Yeah.
And
my clients are still working.
What percentage are cashing out of Palm Beach, crowded, expensive, super heated Palm Beach and Miami and Lauderdale and other places, and moving in from Florida?
I think it's the smaller percentage, but it's a percentage that didn't used to be minuscule. So if it was 5%, it might be 15% now, but it's increased without question. We never had inquiries from those communities before, and now they're coming.
Is it 50% from, say, the Northeast, the New York City, with a 90-mile radius of New York City? Is that 50% and 50% from other?
I think so. Yes, I do.
I think so.
I do. A little bit of Massachusetts. We have an awful lot of folks that keep multiple properties because they're blessed to be able to do so. And so think about a place where you might like to be in the summer, Block Island or the Cape. They're also saying we like Vero Beach because we can have a water-based lifestyle year-round.
I think we have a lot of people that are trying to leave congestion and come to a small town where they feel safe. And they still have a little bit of space, and not everybody knows their name.
And what's interesting, John, is that we're getting a little bit of flight out of places like Naples and Bonita that are beautiful. I don't mean to be cheeky at all, but I'm hearing from clients that they thought it was their forever spot, but they say something like, gosh, if we don't head out by 9 a.m. for the beach, we can't get there. We can't get a reservation. I mean, that's not fun. That grinds you. It's the whole antidote to chilling out. All it does is make you stressed out all the time. So, and again, I think it goes back to thoughtful long-range planning.
Well, you mentioned taxes, and of course, figuring out the income tax in Florida is easy. How about the property taxes? So, is it mill rate? You know, how much on a 5 million, on a 3 million? Is there staggered?
Figure about 2% of the price somebody pays for a piece of property.
Yeah, between 1.6% and 2%, Scott. And since we have no income tax, they've got to constantly generate revenue, right? So they've got to think of other ways. So here, every time title transfers, you are reassessed. And the basis of that assessment is largely going to be your purchase price. But it's going to take a year to catch up, because we're a year in arrears in our taxation. And where it goes thereafter depends on whether or not you opt to try to qualify for homestead and say, I'm going to be here 6 months and 1 day. Why the 1 day? I don't know, but that's what it is. And they want to see your driver's license is here. Your automobile is registered here. Reasonable signs that you really are spending the time here. And if you get that, and it's perpetual, you don't need to keep re-upping it, you have a 3% cap on where your assessed value can go.
Let's put it this way. I moved here and bought my house in 97, moved from New Jersey, and I'm paying less in taxes in my house here than I was in New Jersey in 1997. And my house here, for inflation reasons, is worth 5 times what my house was in New Jersey.
But for those of us who are thinking of coming, let's say I'm the guy who buys that house that you already identified. I paid $1.7 million for the land, and I now have a $5 million, to make the math easy. I now have a $5 million into it. So will I be assessed at the $5 million mark and pay $100,000 per year in taxes?
Yes.
Forever. Yes. Until I sell it.
Yeah, and once you get your homestead in place, John, if you do so, it's portable. They did that as a way to try to help primarily seniors that were feeling like they couldn't get out of their house because if they lost their portability, the taxes would make it unaffordable for them. So you can port it either down or up. But yes, and in the case of a build, it takes a little longer because you're taxed on land. So you might get an extra year out of it, John.
So if Bob were to move, he could take his homesteader discount with him to the new house.
Correct. And how much you're allowed to take, Scott, depends on if you're going up or down in value. If you're going up, it's 100% portable. If it's down, there's a ratio and you get a percentage.
So Bob, what would your tax? How much would your taxes go up if? How much would my taxes go up if I bought your house? From what do you pay now?
I pay $11,000 a year right now in property taxes, and if I was to sell it at the value that it's at, I'd be at $95,000.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a huge savings.
Yeah.
But you could sell your house and buy the one we just looked at, the other $5,100,000 a year, and still be paying your 11, more or less.
Yes, we'd be paying a little bit more than that, but it's not 100% punitive.
Right.
We'd be probably paying $20,000.
Right. So it does make a difference.
So one benefit Florida always had was that for a long period of time, you didn't have to have schools or very small schools. Now Florida seems to be doing a very good job of increasing the schools, increasing elementary. The secondary education is getting much better under stuff. Are you guys seeing that affecting the taxing, or is it just basically the increase in the pricing?
I'd say it's benign.
Yeah.
You know, what Florida did is they decided to go from the top down to improve the education system. So they did a lot of collegiate campuses all across Florida, and they're good schools, very well considered. But they're now getting into the elementary levels. So they really started in college and worked backwards because they knew the colleges and that education would attract commerce and better companies. So it's been a 20-year process.
But we're here 20 years. This year is our 20th year here. We now have magnet schools at the elementary school, like STEM magnet schools at the elementary level. We've got a junior college that's now a full-time college, and on their campus at Indian River State, they have a high school for performing arts that's a magnet high school. Those kids can take classes at the college because they share the campus. And gosh, those kids graduate high school and they've got a year of college under their belt. So it's changed dramatically.
That's great.
Is our schools a factor? I know that one of my friends is looking at the East Coast, moving from the West Coast of Florida to the East Coast. They have a school-age child. They picked their favorite school and there was no room. And they picked their second school and there's no room. And so it's going to dictate where on the East Coast of Florida they settle. Not to mention that wherever they're looking, there's too little inventory and a whole lot of,
I think coming from New Jersey and Sally came from Connecticut, but when we brought my kids down here, they were 8, 9, and 11. And so we put them in the public school, local, and the textbooks, they were 2 years behind the schools in New Jersey. So we yanked them out as soon as we discovered that and brought them into Fort Pierce to an Episcopal school, and was on a waiting list for another very good prep school called St. Edward's. So we went through the throes, but there's ways around it if you persevere. But you have to do it because the schools, I think, public schools are not up to what we're used to up in the Northeast.
Well, here would be my comment about that. There are, like in any town, there are some school districts that are held in higher esteem and do well by the indicator if you believe the standardized tests and the markers that they give. So in Vero Beach, there is an elementary school on the barrier island. In fact, many clients and many owners, not just clients, have the children attend that elementary school through 5th grade. Then they make a decision about what are we going to do thereafter. So there are, I would say, probably more options if you're on the barrier island than if you were not. But that said, there are certain school districts where I would say we need to be thinking about this school district and let's not look over here.
Scott's on the Affordable Housing Committee. I'm on the zoning board. One of the pressures that we hear about in Martha's Vineyard, Greenwich, New Canaan is it's getting less and less affordable, and there's less and less open space. You talked a little bit about a plan to address open space. You have an active land trust, and so I don't know how they acquire more land, but I want to hear more about that. And I want to hear whether you're also seeing pressure in these high-end exclusive communities to address affordability.
Yes to both. I mean, we've had several new projects, one out by the hospital and one out by the airport, to have housing for medical personnel, x-ray technicians, nurses, to say there needs to be something there. And it tends to be privately driven.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cut to the quick. The only way you're going to produce affordable housing is density. And you have to have the right zoning for it, and you have to have the right infrastructure for it. I grew up in the development business in New Jersey, where the development decisions, the Mount Laurel decision is very famous. We had exclusionary zoning, 15 acre, 5 acre, 10 acre. And the only way we could get affordable housing going was density. And that's the only way it's going to happen. The country has been underserved with housing for 10 years. And and it's always this not in my backyard stuff. And everybody wants to be a do-gooder, and they are do-gooders. But I was asked this question at a symposium recently, how do you produce affordable housing here? And I said, first of all, you have to have some affordable land. And the only way you're going to do that is cut down the land price per unit. And then you have to have the infrastructure. So go west of 95 and take the ag zoning and create some multifamily density. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Is that where it's going to happen? West of 95 for Vero Beach?
Yes.
Yes.
That's where the appetite would be for it, without question.
Yes. That'll happen there.
Yeah.
Is that like your Palm Beach versus West Palm Beach, where they say all the workers don't live on Palm Beach, they come east every day and then they go back west?
That's the way it is in Vero Beach for the most part.
Okay. And how long a commute is it for somebody who's going to work? And then
16 miles.
Yeah. The blessing of no density is that it's distance, but it's not onerous like LA. I was just in LA. Holy moly, the traffic there. So people say, well, as long as I'm 30 minutes to the beach, I'm like, oh, that's, you don't need to say that.
I'll tell you something that's extraordinary. They really take care of roads down here. So the planning by the government, building roads, doubling the size of roads and so forth and so on, is an ever-present, ongoing project. And I think they do that based on the hurricane evacuation routes and so on and so forth. But they are really on top of road infrastructure.
And anticipated population development in certain parts of town. So it's very proactive, which is unusual to see, because I was just with colleagues over the weekend, and some of them were from Austin, for example. I don't mean to pick on Austin, but they were saying it's just a mess. They can't keep up with it. They're trying to build roads and all the people are already here.
They are, I would say here, they're about 5 to 10 years ahead.
Right.
By the way, we like when people pick on other areas, so we encourage that.
Okay, well then we'll pick on, okay.
But for the roads, I mean, it's amazing. You don't have to fill potholes or plow or put sand. You have a lot more more money available.
Right.
I don't miss those potholes.
Yeah. We always say we don't shovel snow, we shovel sand. Yeah.
And how about water? I mean, that's always not always, but it's just a question that comes up every once in a while with sinkholes and reservoirs and purification. And so, are there any water issues in Vero?
No. It's very interesting also, Scott, coming from the Northeast, another restraint to development was always infrastructure. Oh, we don't have the sewer capacity. We don't have the water capacity, and we're not going to have it for the next 10 years. Down here, we have all the capacity. They're way ahead. So it's a progressive planning, not in the political sense, but it's really, they have a lot of foresight. The infrastructure's here. I haven't heard once in my 25 years down here that, oh, sorry, we can't develop that area. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the water.
The builder, come on down. Plenty of capacity.
There's land in Florida? What? So where would you say would be like the best opportunity if somebody's coming up from, coming into Vero Beach and said, I want the best value. I mean, like I occasionally, like if you own a restaurant, you challenge the sommelier in order to say, what's the best value wine you have here? And guys.
Well, I mean, I touched on this a little bit earlier, Scott. I try to say, where do we anticipate the market going, right? So if we look at areas that are super hot right now and becoming, the prices are becoming rarefied air. The market, if you envision a cup spilling over, where are those areas where when that spills over, where's the market going to go to? So we've got, for example, if you wanted a waterfront community where Bob lives is becoming, it's a very rarefied price point. It's 3 to 4 for a teardown. So corollary towns north and south, Cache Cay, Pebble Bay, I think become really smart next, like that's where the market's going to go, that maybe to take a look at, because the market's looking for alternatives.
The other drive from the migration, and I think Sally would agree with me on this, is people really want new. And Scott, in our market, and John, new is important because new means code. And so we're in the 2020 building code now, and they change the codes here every 2 years, okay? Now the wind loading hasn't changed since early 2000. We're at 140 miles an hour. If you're on the water, you're at 160 miles an hour. You need it.
Yeah, no,
so the code changes. We were talking about older stock before. They didn't have good bones, but they also don't have good structural infrastructure. So the houses get old here quickly as a result. I mean, anything that was done before Andrew in 96, 98 is not so good.
Like what ages? Is it the plumbing and the electricity and it just
it doesn't mean
down?
No, it doesn't mean, well, we've got a lot of sun here, but it was really design elements. The ceilings were 8 feet. Now ceilings are 12 feet. Window patterns are different. They're at 6'8". Doors were 6'8". Now it's 8 feet, and transoms at 10 feet.
Well, and roof attachments.
Yep.
Dramatically different.
Right.
With your trusses.
The shallow, the older product had very shallow roof pitches, 4s, 3s, 5s. Now we do 7, 8s, 9s. So there's material design changes, number one, structural changes that are important so that you can have your design, and then the rest is cosmetic. Open floor plans are kind of standard here, and so on and so forth. So it's just a change. So the product gets very tired for all those reasons.
I've heard people say it's overpriced, it's overheated, and I'm just going to wait for the next hurricane, for the next hurricane, and then Florida will see a price correction. Is that right?
Well, I think it depends on what part of Florida you're talking about. It's about your base supply, right, John? So I always say we have a built-in hedge, which is policy, which has artificially limited supply.
But if a hurricane comes and whacks you guys, is there just so much demand from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut that you're just like, yeah, go ahead? I mean, if some people want to leave, we've got 2 people for every one of them who wants to leave, who gives up after the hurricane.
100%. We say it's like, instead of going 150 on the Autobahn, where maybe we're going 130, but we're still going 130. We still only have 48 houses for sale on the barrier island, John. Back in the day, it used to always be between 330 and 400.
But to your point of hurricanes, all the more reason to have a 2020 product or a 2016 product that were built to those standards. I can tell you, we had 2 hurricanes within 3 weeks of each other in 2004, September. And I had houses in the most, Scott get a kick out of this, I had houses in the most vulnerable stages you could possibly have it. Partially sheathed on the roof, couple of windows in, wide open. I mean, I fled to North Carolina with my girls in school, and I didn't sleep very well. I assumed the whole truss rack was going to be in the middle of the golf course. But when I came back, I had no damage. And the codes are that good and that strong. So, I didn't have, it was rather extraordinary.
It's true. And my house is much older than Bob's, and I'm 5 off the ocean. We had an original roof at the time. We lost 5 roof tiles. Now our landscape was pretty much shot, but you know, that's easy to replace. Yeah. And now everybody has storm shutters and is more thoughtful about it. Right. But it's just fundamentally, it's a hedge by we just don't have the supply, and the demand is so extraordinarily greater than the supply.
So you're not worried about alligators. You're not worried about hurricanes.
Nope.
Are they still launching anything from Cape Canaveral? And how's your view when the space shuttle used to go up?
So cool. You go out to the beach and look up. It's so cool.
And SpaceX is very active.
Yeah, SpaceX is really active.
So they do a lot of launches, and you can see everything. I mean, you just see an orange flame. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
But we're all bored by it, but I have to tell you, they have another launch.
Yeah.
And how about how good is an Indian River grapefruit straight off the tree versus the box stuff we get up here?
Oh man, if I can make one shameless plug for a local company, and they're doing really well with national distribution now, Natalie's Orchid Island. If y'all haven't tried it, go try Natalie's Orchid Island. Natalie was a classmate of my daughter's. They are a wonderful local family. Beautiful product range, and if you can't get one off the tree, Scott, it's as close as you can get.
I will tell you, I have an orange tree, a lime tree, a lemon tree, and a mango tree. And every time you pick the fruit off those trees and you cut into them, the juice just jumps out at you. I mean, it's extraordinary. But
Now we of course have the deer and the squirrels with you. Everything. Does anything down there eat any local?
We have squirrels and we have bunnies that are voracious.
And squeeze them into pure.
I want to see the bunny that gets up in the tree and takes out the.
Well, I've been trying to get some Confederate jasmine to take, Scott, and the bunnies are giving me a very difficult time. So I think we may have to go to something with prickers to keep them away. Like bougainvillea.
Oh, we have bobcats that'll take care of the bunnies. So.
Yeah, we have bobcats.
Oh, super.
So, what's the future? Where is this just going to keep going onward and upward? More Yankees, more carpetbaggers down there, especially once your airport starts connecting with Westchester again. It's just going to get. I don't know whether you want to say better or it's going to get worse. It sounds like the convenience makes it better. More people come down. They come down, they take old stock houses, they take them down and they build new stock houses and they contribute to the tax base. So it sounds like you're welcoming additional development. The zoning is in place to keep it from being overdeveloped. So development is welcome. Foreigners are welcome. Building is welcome because you feel confident that you've got the laws in place to manage this down to, what was it, 35-foot limit on height and, and a decent FAR.
Right. And, you know, condos can only be 4 stories. And my experience has been folks coming here from parts elsewhere are coming because they like it and they're not looking to see it change. And so I guess what I would say is there's respect for what was, and there might be a knockdown, but they're going to try really hard to say, let's build something that is harmonious with the neighborhood and not stick out like a Quonset hut, which wouldn't get approved anyway. But, you know, here I would say there is reverence for what was and appreciation of it, and not trying to come in and remake the joint.
I think it's really hard to ruin it. And when you're in a car and you come over the causeway, what's very unique about Vero is everything is underneath the canopy of the oaks. I mean, it's quite magnificent. There's a few things sticking up, but it's not an eyesore. So the immediate flavor of the town is, oh boy, this is different. And for the reasons Sally explained, plus we have a scarcity of land. And the people that have the wherewithal to buy houses and knock them down usually do very nice things.
Right.
So it's a special place. In terms of demand, the question you haven't asked is, what do we think in terms of inflation and appreciation? And I answered that the other day with somebody. I said, well, we've had 15, 20, 22% year over year. I don't think it's going to continue like that. And I think we're probably looking at 7 or 8% going forward. And I only temper that just based on what we're doing, construction buying. We had a terrible third quarter and first quarter this year with the supply problems. And a lot of that is being relieved at the moment for reasons. Amazon was building a 2 million square foot facility, so they absorbed all the concrete. We couldn't get the concrete. Now Amazon is in the position of having to give up 20% of it because they built too much, you know. And then SpaceX is building like crazy up at Canaveral, a lot of pads, so they dominated concrete up there, but it's pretty much over.
Right.
So
why is it gonna, so what's going to temper it? Why won't it continue? Because why won't it just continue at a 15% clip? Why
because I think I have the opinion, it's very hard for me to price things right now. And so I always get Sally's help, but it's very difficult. So I've been in this business my whole life. It doesn't ever go straight up all the time.
Right.
So you need to temper your intellect and temper your pricing and not be terribly greedy. And I think people are coming to that adjustment. And I think the suppliers are coming to that adjustment as well. You just can't keep raising things 25%. Right. I think you're not going to hurt your market share or your business relations.
It's not sustainable. And everything I've been reading, because I'm kind of a data junkie, is cumulatively maybe 25% over the next 5 years versus 25 in 1 year. And so sometimes when clients will say, gosh, I really missed it, I'll take 25%. 25% is not nothing. And that is much more manageable and sustainable long-term.
The problem with stats, though, is they're all average stats. I think it's a totally different ballgame with brand new product versus resale product. Mm-hmm. And it's but that's a stat that is never really well measured, I think, or I haven't ever found a good reference.
Well, that's true. And I did some numbers for you ahead of this. As an example, resales generally that are not new product, 393 a foot. So let's say 400 to 750 a foot, generally speaking, for resales. And then new goes up to, 1, 2 and up.
Yeah.
So you definitely get more bang for your buck on a resale. There's no doubt, but there are resales and there are resales.
But then when you look at it that way, and because I sell new houses, I have to be on top of this. If I'm being compared to an old house, then you have to say, well, how much are you going to put into the old house? You
have to do the calculus.
You're going to have a new roof, you're going to have new windows, you're going to gut the kitchen. I mean, and you're not going to be up to code. So, right. But, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. And if that's your affordability point, I understand it.
Right.
But those stats are never really well thought out or expressed in media. It's between Sally and I, and you're in business. Yeah. And so you have to say, all right, what's the right thing to do here? How are we looking at this the right way? I think it's really got a lot of nuance to it if you want to know the truth.
And I would say the shift that we've seen in the past, say 4 weeks, tell me if you've seen it as well in New Canaan, is we're starting to see price reductions that we hadn't been seeing. And here's the commonality of things that are being price reduced. They lack amenities, where I said before, the table stakes amenity needs to be condition is really top shelf. Mm-hmm. And if it's not that, even if it's got a good location or something, we're starting to see price reductions.
It's a B property and it's going to get a B price.
And so we're starting to see price reductions. Conversely, if you've got the amenity, quote unquote, of great condition, then you've got premium location or land or water or both. The market is still right out there and turns out immediately.
I've been asked 4 times by 4 sellers in the last 48 hours, how's the market? They're all seeing the same headlines. We're all getting Apple News. We're all getting a barrage of bad news headlines. And I could put them on the screen, from the Atlantic, the Wall Street Journal, the Times. All of them are piling on, talking about the end. This is the end of the era. And they're all calling their realtor. They're calling you. They're calling all the realtors, and all the realtors are calling each other. And there's this echo chamber going on of like, is this the end? I think it's the end. Is this the end? And then you look at these economists. But I have to say that most of my clients, my sellers, some of them have said, I want to take the opportunity. I'm at a time in my life where I want to sell. but none of them are over leveraged. None of them like they were during maybe some of the last two recessions. They're not leveraged like they were. They don't have to sell. It's a choice that they're making to reduce in order to hit a seasonal opportunity in the market. It's late in the spring season. I'm going to reduce because I want to sell now, not because they think that there's going to be a crash. At least in this area of Fairfield County, none of them think that we're about to crash and I'm going to lose my opportunity entirely. Are you seeing the same confidence, long-term confidence, but seasonal softness?
Yes, yes.
That was a long-winded
and much of our movement is elective as well, both on the buy and the sell side, 100%.
Scott Hobbs, your clients are making a decision to build a house that may take 18 months to design and get approvals and another 18 months to build. So they're looking 3, 4. Is the level of confidence in the economy 3, 4 years out, is that changing in the last couple months because of all the bad news?
I don't think so yet. And I'm sure that you're experiencing the same thing under Vero. I mean, when we had the appraiser on a few weeks ago, and we talked about, I mean, the market almost has to cool to become more healthy. Because like, if you want to do a renovation on a house right now, where do you go while your house is being renovated? Right. You can't. Right. If you want to downsize, you can't find something to downsize. So I'm not going to sell the current house. And so there's just so much stuff happening inside the real estate. And quite frankly, at the higher end, there's enough people who are not hurt where it doesn't particularly matter. Will that change eventually? It certainly could. And it can change in a heartbeat. But there's been so many real estate transactions and so many people have so much invested in those transactions, and building follows real estate transactions. So it's hard to see a scenario over the next couple of years where stuff will go down significantly. And I will now knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just think it's going to be a slowdown of appreciation. That's all.
Well, we're just in a rarefied air. Yeah. You build in rarefied air too. And there's not a lot of property available. Age is very important down here for the previously mentioned reasons. So anything that's new, anything that's on the water that's new is going to be very valuable. Anything that's new that you can walk to town, very valuable. That's the position my company has to be in, happens to be in at the moment, which is a nice position. But it doesn't mean I don't read the newspaper, and it doesn't mean I don't worry. Right. Because I do.
Bob, I use the terms that this is the most miserable happy times ever.
That's
yeah.
So much work out there, so much stuff happening, but it's all a lot harder. Just a lot harder to execute and make happen.
Yes, it is. It's much more difficult.
I'm not ending the show with the most miserable happy times ever.
Yeah.
What can we say in conclusion, Scott, Bob, and Sally? What's the outlook?
Future's very bright for Vero Beach because we've got the policy and the people in place to just keep it unpretentiously elegant, and it's a very special place. Future's very bright for Vero Beach.
I would concur with that. Your location is going to be very, very critical. I think the west side is going to be hurt in this downturn and in this scare, but I don't think the rarefied air is going to be equal to that, and I think we're going to be fine. I hope that the cost nonsense stops. Just hope it's
everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott Hobbs. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Sally. This was a great show. I got everything I wanted. Our watchers said, I want specifics. I want to know what things cost. Well, I think we covered it. I want to know where the hot places to go. Now I know that there's a filet mignon right there between the causeways. I got it. So thank you for a great data-packed show.
My pleasure. And John, if your readers or viewers want to check out local market stats, our website is thedaileygroup.com, because I'm Sally Daley and we're at Douglas Elliman. And there's a couple really good market reports there. One is broad. You can put in any zip code, any town in the United States, and it gives you interesting interactive reports. Another one would be property specific. So they're free of charge. I'm not going to harass you or stalk you. So one is 30,000 feet. One is your own home, and they're on the website, free, and they're terrific.
I was really impressed with your website and the amount market reports. I was really impressed. I wanted to ask you offline who does your website and copy everything you're doing, if you don't mind. So,
but it's I'm a data nerd, so feel free to do it, and it's a lot of fun to see.
Okay.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right. See you next week, Scott Hobbs. And thank you. Bye.
Bye now.